When I took the job as the night manager at the Clown Motel in Tonopah, Nevada, I thought I was escaping my old life. I had no friends to leave behind, no family to call home, just a string of failed attempts at finding purpose in dead-end towns. So when I saw the listing for a full-time manager position with lodging included, I packed what little I had and drove straight through the desert, ignoring the growing ache in my gut. Tonopah looked like something time had forgotten, one of those dusty desert towns where the wind tells more stories than the people do. And there, like a garish tumor on the edge of the highway, stood the Clown Motel. The facade was painted in chipped, faded blues and reds, with giant cartoonish clowns plastered above the entrance. A dozen statues of clowns stood around the parking lot, their painted grins warped by the years. The building shared its land with an old cemetery, which wasn't mentioned in the job listing. Rows of crumbling headstones sat just behind the motel, the nearest only 20 feet from room 103. I should have turned around right then, but I needed the job. The man who handed me the keys said his name was Marcus. He was leaving in a hurry, barely taking the time to explain anything. Everything you need's in the handbook. Keep the doors locked after midnight. Don't answer room 6's calls. Don't talk to the clowns. Good luck. He shoved a faded leather-bound book into my hand and walked straight to his truck, muttering prayers under his breath. I watched the dust cloud rise as he drove off. I was alone. The motel creaked in the wind, and for a second, I thought I heard laughter. I dismissed it. The first night, I sat behind the check-in desk, reading the handbook. It looked ancient, like something pulled from a grave. Its cover was scratched and smeared with what I hoped was old coffee. The pages were handwritten in different inks and pens. Some entries dated back to the 1960s. The first page had one sentence written in bold block letters. Follow the rules, or you won't survive your shift. The rules were simple at first, almost laughable. Rule 1, lock the lobby door at 12 a.m. sharp. Not 11:59, not 12:01. Exactly 12 a.m. Rule 2, if a guest checks in after midnight, refer them to the Desert Star Inn down the road. Do not, under any circumstance, let them stay. Rule 3, room 6 is never to be entered. Ignore any sounds, lights, or voices from within. It is unoccupied. It must remain unoccupied. Rule 4, if a clown statue changes position overnight, do not touch it. Make a note of its location. Check the camera port in the red binder. Rule 5, if a guest mentions a man in black standing at the edge of the cemetery, ask them what time they saw him. If it was before 3:33 a.m., offer them a refund and ask them to leave. If it was after 3:33 a.m., never speak of it again. Rule 6, do not, under any circumstance, look under the vending machine. There were more. Rules about the mirrors in room 14. A guideline for what to do if you find old coins in the sink. Instructions for dealing with a phone call from a number that reads 000-00000. The more I read, the less it felt like a joke. By the time midnight rolled around, I was nervous enough to lock the door on the second. I set a timer for 11:59 and counted down with the second hand on the lobby clock. At the stroke of 12, I turned the bolt and drew the blinds. The world outside shifted. I don't mean that metaphorically. The wind died instantly. The clowns outside the window cast longer shadows than they should have. The power flickered, but only for a second. Then silence. It was the kind of silence that screamed. The phone rang at 12:06 a.m. I stared at the display. Room 6. I didn't answer. I sat perfectly still, heart pounding in my ears. The ringing stopped after the fourth chime. The silence returned. By 12:40 a.m., I thought I was safe. I started watching the monitors, half out of boredom and half out of dread. Nothing moved on the screens. Not the guests, not the trees, not even the clown statues. Until one did. The statue nearest the ice machine was now beside the vending machine. I stared at the screen, then out the lobby window. Sure enough, the clown had moved. It had been facing south before. Now it faced me, its painted smile wider than I remembered. I didn't touch it. I wrote down the time and location in the red binder. The last entry in it was from Marcus, just 4 days ago. He'd seen the same clown move. The binder included a note. If the same clown moves 3 nights in a row, burn it. There were matches taped inside the back cover. The phone rang again at 1:14 a.m. Again, room 6. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked the hallways. Every door was shut. No lights under the cracks. No voices. No movement. The air smelled of old wood and something else, like sweet rot. As I passed room 6, the doorknob rattled. I didn't stop walking. When I returned to the lobby, the clown statue was gone. I scanned the lot. Nothing. I flipped through camera feeds. There it was, standing at the end of the hallway on the second floor. How? There were no stairs inside the motel, just a rusted fire escape outside. I hadn't heard any movement. No steps. No scraping. The camera flickered. Now it was gone again. A loud knock echoed from the lobby door. I spun around. A man stood outside. He wore a black coat, wide-brimmed hat pulled low. I couldn't see his face. He knocked again. I looked at the clock. 3:32 a.m. I hesitated. He turned and walked away, vanishing behind the motel toward the cemetery. 3:33 a.m. The wind picked up. A guest called the front desk at 3:40. Room 8. Hi. I just saw someone standing by the cemetery. I thought maybe it was you. I swallowed. What time did you see him? I asked. Just now. I paused. Would you like a refund for your stay? The guest laughed nervously. No, I'm fine. I just wanted to check. You sure everything's okay? Yes, I said. Everything is fine. I hung up. I didn't sleep that morning. At sunrise, the clown statue was back by the vending machine, same position as the night before. I called Marcus's number. It was disconnected. I searched the web for news, any mention of something strange happening at the clown motel. There were rumors, Reddit threads, ghost stories, a few locals mentioning disappearances. One article about a woman who stayed in room 6 and vanished without a trace. The manager at the time had been arrested, then released. The room was sealed off. No explanation. I walked up to room 6 that afternoon. The door was scratched around the knob, like someone had tried to claw their way in. Or out. I put my hand against the wood. It was warm. That night, I locked the lobby at 12 a.m. sharp. The phone rang. Room 6. I didn't answer, but I could hear something breathing through the receiver. The second night came quicker than I expected. I hadn't slept more than a couple of hours during the day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the clown statue moving in jagged, unnatural frames like a puppet missing its strings. I'd dream of the door to room 6 slowly creaking open while something crouched inside the dark, just beyond reach. Every dream ended the same way, me picking up the phone and a voice whispering my name from the other end. I made coffee, strong enough to burn my throat. As night fell, the motel took on that strange hush again. It wasn't just silence, it was an absence, a vacuum where the world should have been. Guests were quiet, TVs were off, and the desert beyond the cemetery felt like it stopped breathing altogether. By 11:55 p.m., I was standing at the lobby door, key in hand. I didn't even wait for the timer. The moment the clock struck midnight, I turned the lock with trembling fingers and pulled down the blinds. As I did, I thought I saw something just past the edge of the lot. Not a person, a shape. Too tall, too still, watching. I didn't look again. I sat behind the desk and opened the red binder. The entry I wrote last night stared back at me in crude, rushed handwriting. Clown statue moved from ice machine to vending machine at 12:42 a.m. I flipped to the last few pages. Marcus had seen the same clown statue move twice, 2 consecutive nights. If it moved again tonight, that would make 3. I pulled the box of matches from the binder's back pocket and laid it on the desk beside me. At 12:17 a.m., the phone rang, room 6. I let it ring 4 times, just like the night before. Then silence. The second the ringing stopped, the lights in the lobby dimmed, not all the way off, but just low enough that I could barely see my hands. I didn't move. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. I checked the thermostat. It was still set to 72. I opened the small drawer beneath the desk to find the old flashlight Marcus had left. When I turned it on, the light flickered violently before stabilizing into a dim yellow beam. The monitors were still recording. I watched as each hallway camera scrolled past slowly. Camera 1, lobby, still, just me and the flickering wall lamp. Camera 2, first floor hallway, empty. Except the clown statue was gone again. I flipped to camera 3, the second floor. There it was. This time it was standing right outside room 8, the same room where the guest had seen the man near the cemetery. I reached for the binder and began scribbling a note. But before I finished the time, the monitor buzzed and the statue vanished. I flipped through every camera. No sign of it. I leaned back in the chair, but it was already too late. I felt it. That thick, slow burn in my spine. The same feeling you get when you know something is behind you. I didn't turn. Not immediately. Instead, I stared at the reflective surface of the monitor. The screen glitched slightly, but for a brief moment I saw what was behind me. It was the clown. Closer than ever. No more than 3 feet away. Its paint had chipped around the eyes, revealing what looked like flesh beneath. The smile was the same, permanent, wide, cruel. But its hands were what terrified me most. They were no longer molded plastic or resin. They were gloved, real. Trembling slightly as if waiting for my reaction, I closed my eyes and reached slowly for the matchbox. I lit one. The clown didn't move. I lit a second, then a third, and tossed them both into the metal trash bin near the desk. Nothing. Then the fourth match lit with a loud crack. The flame jumped tall and fast. The clown statue suddenly stumbled backward, arms twitching violently as if resisting something unseen. Its head jerked to the side with a terrible cracking sound. Then it bolted. Not walked, not shuffled, ran straight into the hallway. I grabbed the flashlight and followed. The beam bounced with my footsteps, barely keeping up. I turned the corner into the first-floor corridor and froze. All the hallway lights were off, but the emergency lights glowed red, casting long shadows over the stained carpet. In the distance, room 6's door was ajar. A low moaning sound came from inside, like someone in pain or mourning. My hands shook. The handbook said never to enter, never respond, never acknowledge it. But the door was open now. That had to mean something had changed. I crept closer, one step at a time. Each creak of the floor beneath me made the moaning grow louder. It wasn't a voice. It was many, layered, like a dozen people crying at once. When I reached room 6, the temperature around me dropped again. Frost crept up the doorframe. My breath fogged thick in the air. I tried shining the flashlight into the room, but the beam disappeared into blackness. Not dimmed, swallowed. I reached forward and, with just a fingertip, pushed the door closed. It didn't budge. I pressed harder. Something on the other side was holding it open. Then I heard it. A whisper, right behind my ear. Don't close it. He's not done feeding. I ran. I didn't care what rules I broke at that point. I sprinted back to the lobby, slammed the office door shut, locked it, and pulled down every blind. I curled behind the desk with the flashlight on my chest like a shield. The phone rang at 1:03 a.m. It wasn't room 6. The screen said, unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again at 1:04, then 1:05. By 1:06, I pulled the cord from the phone entirely, but it kept ringing. Not from the desk phone, from the one in the back office. The old rotary phone Marcus said was just for emergencies. I crawled toward the door and peeked into the storage room. The red phone on the wall was spinning, not ringing. The dial was moving in small circles, as if someone was dialing it from the inside. Then, with a soft click, the line connected. And I heard it. A child's voice, singing, a lullaby I didn't recognize. Words soft, warbled, like they were being sung underwater, then static, then breathing, slow, wet, hungry. I ripped the cord from the wall. Sparks flew. The singing stopped. The power went out. I was left in darkness, only the weak beam of my flashlight to guide me. I backed out of the storage room slowly, heart racing. When I returned to the front desk, I gasped. The clown statue was back, but it wasn't outside. It stood behind the counter, exactly where I had been sitting. Its arms were no longer at its side. They were outstretched, like it wanted a hug. I turned and ran for the maintenance closet. I'd seen a jerry can of fuel in there earlier. If the clown had moved 3 times, that meant I could burn it. I didn't care about rules anymore. When I reached the closet and grabbed the can, the door behind me slammed shut. The lights in the room flickered back on, and I saw them. Dozens of clown faces, painted on the walls, the ceiling, the shelves, each one with eyes that moved. All of them watching me, all of them smiling. The fuel can felt heavy in my arms, but I lifted it and backed out slowly. Back to the lobby. The statue hadn't moved. Good. I emptied the can at its feet, struck a match, and hesitated for just a second. Its head tilted, as if it was pleading, but I dropped the match. The fire caught quickly. The statue didn't scream. It didn't move. It just stood there as the paint blistered and popped, the plastic hands blackening, the smile melting off its face. The fire alarm stayed silent. No guests woke up, no sirens, no sprinklers, only the sound of fire crackling. At 3:33 a.m., the lobby clock stopped. The statue was gone. Only a pile of black ash remained, with two white gloves resting neatly on top. I didn't sleep that morning either. The sun finally came up, but it didn't feel like it. The sky outside the Clown Motel was an ugly shade of gray, like the desert itself was holding its breath. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. I stood in the lobby, staring at the spot where the clown statue had burned to ash. The gloves were still there, untouched by the fire, bright white, spotless, out of place. I didn't touch them. Instead, I found a small hand broom in the supply closet, swept the ash into a metal dustpan, and emptied it behind the dumpster out back. I buried the gloves separately, at least 2 feet down in the gravel behind room 9. I said a quick prayer, not because I believed it would help, but because I couldn't think of anything else to do. When I returned to the front desk, I opened the handbook again. I needed answers. Something, anything that might explain what I had just done. I flipped to the back. There was a page I hadn't noticed before. It was stuck to the one before it, like someone had spilled glue or blood. The ink was different from the rest of the book, darker. The handwriting rushed and uneven. It read, "If you destroy a clown statue, the others will come looking for it. They will not like what you've done. The rules will change." My mouth went dry. The handbook had never said there were more than one statue. But now I remembered. The motel had a dozen of them scattered across the lot when I first arrived. I hadn't paid much attention to where they were positioned until they started moving. I walked the perimeter that afternoon, counted 9 statues now. One was gone, burned. That left 2 unaccounted for. The front desk phone was still dead from the night before. I didn't bother fixing it. Instead, I checked the cameras. At first, everything looked normal. Then I saw it. On camera 4, facing the cemetery fence, one of the clown statues stood with its back to the motel, staring toward the gravestones. Only it hadn't been there yesterday, and now it was holding something in its hand. I zoomed in. A glove, identical to the one I buried. That night, I locked the lobby at 12 a.m. on the dot. I sat down, flashlight and fuel can beside me, and waited. The air was heavier tonight, thicker, like breathing through a wet cloth. At 12:14 a.m., the lobby lights flickered, just once. Then I saw it on the monitor. Room 6's door was wide open, not cracked, not nudged, fully open. A shadow moved inside. I flipped through the other cameras. Nothing. No guests in the hallway, no movement in the parking lot. But when I returned to camera 1, the lobby feed, I nearly screamed. A clown statue stood at the glass. This one had a blue hat. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. I turned slowly toward the front door. It was gone. I stood up, walked to the door, and peeked outside. Nothing. Then the power went out. All cameras dead. The emergency lights didn't kick in this time. The lobby was plunged into darkness so thick I couldn't even see the fuel can at my feet. Something knocked once at the front door. Then again. Then 3 more times, fast, like drumming. Then silence. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I reached for the flashlight and flicked it on. It lit for a second, then died. Footsteps echoed across the ceiling. I froze. There's no access to the roof from inside the motel, but something was up there, walking, pacing, then crawling. I could hear it dragging across the shingles, moving toward the back of the building. That's when the smell hit me. Sweet, chemical rot, like sugar left in a corpse. The scent seeped in through the vents, thick and nauseating. I dropped to my knees, gagging, and from beneath the desk I saw something I'll never forget. An eye, pressed against the small gap at the bottom of the front door. It wasn't a human eye. Too large, too glassy, too still, and it blinked. I dove for the handbook, flipping to any page, desperate for something useful. My fingers landed on a half-ripped note paper clipped to the inside of the back cover. It said, "If they come to the door, pretend you aren't here. If they find out you're watching, they'll never stop watching back." I turned off the flashlight and crawled into the supply closet, pulling the door shut behind me as gently as possible. I held my breath. I could hear footsteps now, soft and deliberate, on the tile just outside the closet. Something was inside the lobby, something breathing shallow, mechanical breaths. Then laughter, quiet at first, childlike, then growing louder, deeper, like a chorus of voices echoing from inside a single mouth. It passed by the closet door. I shut my eyes. The handle jiggled once, then stopped. After what felt like an hour, the breathing faded. The silence returned. I waited there until I saw the faintest hint of gray sunlight peeking beneath the closet door. When I emerged, the lobby was a wreck. Chairs overturned. The front desk drawer emptied. The handbook open and torn. And the worst part? On the wall behind the front desk, scrawled in a thick red smear, were 5 words: "You broke the wrong rule." I ran outside, desperate to breathe air that wasn't soaked in mold and dread. And that's when I saw the clown statues again. Every single one of them was facing the lobby windows now. All 9. Standing in a semicircle, watching. By the time I returned to the front lobby, the 10th clown statue had already settled into the courtyard. It hadn't been there yesterday, but now it stood at the very center of the semicircle. It was slightly taller than the rest. It wore a red tuxedo, black shoes, and a pale expression so human I had to squint to convince myself it wasn't alive. That night, I didn't open the lobby. I sat in the office behind the front desk, clutching Marcus's journal and the motel handbook. I read and reread both until the words started to blur. My head throbbed from lack of sleep, and my limbs ached from adrenaline that refused to fade. At exactly midnight, something scraped across the floor in the hallway outside the office. I turned the monitor toward me. Camera 2 showed a shadow moving past room 8. Just one. But the hallway lights flickered in its wake, and the temperature in the office dropped sharply. I leaned in to get a better look, and the screen went black. Then came the knocking. 1 knock, 2 knocks, 3. On the lobby door. My body froze. I remembered the new rule from the altered handbook. If a guest knocks 3 times on the lobby door after midnight, do not let them in. That guest is no longer human. The knocks came again. Louder this time, more forceful. Then a voice. "Manager, I left my key inside." The voice was wrong, too even. No inflection, like someone reading lines without knowing what the words meant. I didn't respond. A few seconds passed. Then came the sound of something dragging. Not footsteps, just weight, being pulled. Then silence. I dared to peer out from the office door. No one in the lobby. But something had been left at the base of the front door. A single motel key. Room 17. I never checked anyone into room 17. It had been closed since the day I arrived, marked out of order in the system. I assumed there was water damage or some other maintenance issue. But now someone wanted me to go inside. Or something did. The handbook said nothing about room 17, neither did Marcus's journal, which made it worse. I stood at the edge of the hallway for a long time, staring at that cursed door. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to leave it alone, but I had learned something important in the last few nights. The only thing more dangerous than breaking the rules was ignoring an invitation. So I went. Room 17's door was unmarked. No peephole, no placard, just bare, peeling wood. I slid the key into the lock. It turned without resistance. The air inside was cold, metallic, and the stench, something between burnt fabric and rotting candy, hit me instantly. The room wasn't a room. It was a corridor, much longer than it should have been. Red wallpaper, faded and torn in places, no furniture, no windows, only dim, flickering lights hanging from a ceiling that stretched impossibly high. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around. The knob was gone. There was no door anymore, just continuous red wallpaper. My breath caught. The silence in the corridor was suffocating. Then, without warning, the wall beside me shimmered. A shape emerged from it. A clown, but not one I'd seen before. This one was transparent, its body barely visible, like smoke held together by malice. It didn't move toward me. It hovered, watching. I walked slowly forward. As I passed the ghostly thing, it whispered, "What's funny is how you thought you had a choice." I didn't look back. The corridor twisted, tightened, became more narrow, like the motel itself was funneling me deeper. I don't remember how long I walked. Time lost all meaning. The lights above buzzed louder the further I went, until the sound became a scream in my skull. Eventually I came to a door, a simple white door with no handle. Painted on it in blood-red letters were 4 words, "Do not open this door." So of course I did. It opened on its own. The room beyond was circular, small, windowless, the walls lined with mirrors, except they didn't reflect me. They reflected clowns. Each mirror showed a different one. Some I recognized, some I didn't. One mirror showed Marcus, sitting at the lobby desk, alive, reading the handbook. Another showed him being dragged by his feet into room 17, the same room I stood in. I staggered back, heart pounding. The mirrors began to flicker, strobing images of blood, fire, teeth, then laughter. Not one voice, dozens, layered on top of each other, giggling, howling, shrieking. And then behind me, a voice I did recognize. Manager. I turned. A figure stood in the center of the room. Not a clown, not quite human either. Its skin was blank, like a mask that hadn't been painted. Its face had no features, just a smile, a wide, bright smile that stretched across where its eyes should have been. It wore my clothes, my face, my voice. It spoke again. You broke the rule, it said. Now you must take its place. What place? I croaked. The figure tilted its head, then pointed behind me. I turned back to the mirrors. One was different now. It didn't show a clown. It showed me, standing in the circular room. But in the reflection, I was the statue. Still, smiling, painted, a clown. I backed away, heart slamming against my ribs. The figure lunged, but not toward me, into me, through me. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in the motel lobby, lying on the floor. The sun was rising outside, but something was off. My arms felt heavy, stiff. I sat up, moved to the mirror behind the front desk, and I screamed. My face was painted, white, with exaggerated red lips, black diamonds over my eyes. My own reflection stared back at me with a grin I couldn't feel. I wiped at the paint, but it didn't come off. It wasn't on my skin. It was my skin. The phone rang. I hesitated, then picked it up. A voice whispered, "Welcome back. Rule 1, never take off the face." I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I couldn't. That thing in the mirror, it wore my skin, but it wasn't me. Or maybe it was me now. I kept rubbing my face raw, clawing at it in the bathroom sink, praying the paint would come off, but it didn't budge. Not with soap, not with water, not with bleach. The red mouth, the pale cheeks, the black diamonds under my eyes, they weren't makeup. They were part of me. I splashed water on my face again and looked up, hoping for even the smallest change. But the reflection stared back. That same grotesque grin stretched wide across a face I no longer recognized. The corners of the smile reached to the edge of my jaw like it had been cut there. Behind me, in the mirror, a shadow shifted. I spun. Nothing. The bathroom door remained shut. The light above flickered. Then I heard it. The soft sound of bells jingling down the hallway. Footsteps, but not quite human. A rhythmic tap-tap drag. I opened the bathroom door slowly and peeked out. The motel hallway was dim, as if the building hadn't seen daylight in years. Dust floated in the still air. The hallway smelled like popcorn and formaldehyde. I stepped out barefoot, my skin crawling with every step. At the far end of the corridor, room 6's door creaked open. No one stood there, but a clown's shoe lay in front of it. Just one, oversized, torn at the sole. I approached cautiously. I knew I shouldn't. I knew, but I couldn't help it. It was like something had hooked itself into my thoughts, pulling me along. Inside room 6 was a mess. Torn sheets, burned walls. The floor was covered in candy wrappers, shredded motel Bibles, and dozens of gloves, each one turned inside out. The window was wide open. The clown shoe was gone. But on the wall, written in what looked like melted lipstick, was a phrase. He wore the face too long. I backed out and slammed the door. The face. The paint. It wasn't just an effect. It was a curse. A brand. A replacement. I needed help. I grabbed Marcus's journal, the suitcase the man in black had left behind, and went to the back office. I dug through the contents again. Something I missed. Something had to be in there. That's when I found it. A Polaroid photo hidden inside the spine of the journal. It showed a man, not Marcus, someone else, standing in the same motel lobby, face painted, grinning. In the background were the same clown statues, but there were only 5 of them. The photo was dated 1984. I flipped it over. Scrawled on the back were just 5 words. The face is a mask. And then beneath it, in different handwriting, but the mask becomes the man. I didn't understand what it meant, not fully, but I had to try something. I returned to the mirror, lifted the clown nose I'd found in the suitcase, and forced it onto my face. The world shifted. Instantly. The paint deepened. The colors darkened. My ears began ringing, and the mirror fogged up. Through the blur, I saw not myself, but the lobby behind me. But it wasn't empty. A man stood there. Marcus. His face was pale. His eyes hollow. He looked tired. He reached toward the mirror, hand pressed against the glass, and then mouthed two words, "Help me." And the image shattered. I stumbled back, nose still on my face. Behind me, the clown statues from the courtyard had entered the building. All 10 of them. They stood silently in the hallway, now blocking the exits, heads tilted slightly to the side, studying me. Their painted faces looked less cheerful now. Angrier, more expectant, as if I had failed to follow through on something. I grabbed the motel handbook and turned to the rules again. A new one had been written in red ink. If the 10th clown appears in your reflection, your trial has begun. Do not remove the face until the bell tolls 3 times. Trial? Bell? What the hell did that mean? Then I heard it. A low, metallic ring. Not a phone, not a doorbell. Something older, like a cathedral bell. It rang once, and every clown statue turned slightly, not toward me, but toward room 3. I hadn't opened that room since I arrived, but now it was open, and something waited inside. I followed. I couldn't stop myself. Inside room 3 was pitch black, except for a single red lamp in the far corner. Beneath it sat an old-style carnival mirror, warped tall, almost humming with energy, and in front of it, an empty chair. A clown suit hung above it, red and gold, sequined, the tag still attached. Property of guest. I sat down. The mirror didn't show me. It showed hundreds of versions of me, all painted, all smiling. Some looked human, others didn't. Ding! Second bell. The room began to shrink. The walls closed in slightly. The suit dropped onto my lap as if someone invisible had handed it to me. I should have run. I didn't. I slid one arm into the sleeve, then the next. The moment the fabric touched my skin, memories flooded into me, but not mine. I saw children crying, people begging at the front desk, guests vanishing into smoke. I saw the motel in 1961, then 1932, then earlier, always with a manager, always with a clown face, and always ending the same way. They joined the statues. They became the next one in line. Third bell. I shot up. The suit fell from my body, suddenly too heavy, like lead. The mirror cracked. I turned to leave, but room 3 was gone. No walls, no door, just darkness. And the clowns, all around me. They surrounded me in silence. Then one step forward. It was the one with the blue hat, the 10th. And it had my face now, painted, hollow-eyed. It smiled, then spoke with my voice. Your trial is over. And it raised one gloved hand, snapped its fingers. And I was back in the lobby, alone. No statues, no red nose, no paint. Just me, breathing, shaking, bleeding from my nose and ears. I looked to the mirror again. My face was mine. I ran outside into the courtyard. All 10 clown statues were gone, but 11 new ones stood in their place. One at the front with a tag on its shoe. I don't know how long I stood in that courtyard, staring at the 11th statue. It wore my old clothes, my old face. That same stretched grin carved into lips I once called my own. No one else was in sight. The sky had darkened again. The clouds hung low like they were waiting for something to begin or end. A thick wind rolled across the desert, dry and sour, like air exhaled from a crypt. I turned back toward the lobby. It looked normal. Too normal. The neon sign flickered in its usual rhythm. The front desk bell sat undisturbed. The painting of the big top still hung crooked on the wall. But something was off. It felt like walking into a place where you had died. I sat behind the desk, opened Marcus's journal one last time, and flipped to the final page. It was blank. Until it wasn't. Words began to form, bleeding into the paper like ink dropped into water. You survived the trial, but the motel is not done with you. One must always wear the face. It closed itself with a heavy thump, and a key slid across the counter as if pushed by invisible hands. It was larger than the others. Older, rusted. Room 0. I had never seen it before. There was no room 0 on the property map. I checked the guest list. It wasn't there. Still, I knew where to go. The hallway had changed. It had grown longer, narrower. The lights above flickered in sequence, drawing me toward the end. Past room 1, past room 6, past room 17, to a door I had never seen, unlabeled. Black wood, iron handle, cold to the touch. When I opened it, the air sucked out of the hallway behind me, as if the motel itself was holding its breath. Inside was a spiral staircase, descending into darkness. I took the first step, and then another. The air grew thicker with every foot downward. My lungs burned, not from smoke, but from memory. I saw flashes. People I didn't know, faces twisted in terror, clowns whose paint bled like tears. I heard music, too, a faint circus tune playing somewhere deep in the dark, cheerful and haunting. At the bottom of the staircase was a chamber, circular, mirrored, much like the one from before, only now the mirrors didn't show clowns. They showed me 11 versions, each dressed differently, each holding a different item. One had a red balloon, one had a knife, one had a set of motel keys. They stared at me. Then one by one they turned away, all except the last. It stepped out of the mirror and spoke. You broke the rules, not just once, many times, but you followed enough to make it here. Now you must choose. A large book fell from the ceiling, landing on a stone pedestal in the center of the room. It was thick, leather-bound, the same symbol as the motel sign carved into its cover. The final rule is written here. You will read it, you will understand. I opened the book. There were no words, just a reflection, my own face looking back at me from the page, slowly transforming, the paint returning, line by line, my skin becoming pale, my eyes blackening around the edges. Then the reflection smiled. I didn't. The book snapped shut. The lights went out. For a long time, I was nowhere. No sound, no sense of body, only the weight of a truth I hadn't fully accepted until now. The motel didn't just want a manager. It wanted a warden, a prisoner, a performer. And I was all three. When the lights returned, I stood in the courtyard once again. The statues were gone. In their place stood 11 guests, motionless, but breathing, waiting. A bus pulled in off the highway. Dust kicked up from the tires. An old man stepped out, suitcase in hand. He approached the front desk, smiling politely. Room for one? I nodded. Handed him a key. Room 6. The bell above the door chimed. The door closed behind him. The phone rang once. I answered. A voice I hadn't heard before spoke. Flat. Calm. Welcome to the Clown Motel. Remember the rules. And then silence. I placed the receiver back. The motel was alive again. Guests would come. Some would leave. Others would stay. But I would be here. Always here. Wearing the face, keeping the rules, watching the statues. Because now I understood the truth. The final rule wasn't in the book. It was never written down because it was too simple, too final. You never leave the Clown Motel. You become part of it. Forever.